Today we're going to deal with how much paint is too much paint on the Gelli plate. I often see people working on the Gelli plate just putting way too much paint on that plate. And sometimes it's new people, and sometimes people have been doing it for a while, and they end up with very thick, very dense, opaque prints. And a lot of the prints are beautiful. They're wonderful prints, and you can use the technique of using too much. But the beauty of mono printing and a mixed media tool such as your Gelli plate is that of building up thin layers, so you can see a lot of whatever you're putting on every layer, the information from your stencils to maybe drawings and mark making. You want to see that under each layer. And so if you can build up thinner layers, you're going to have a much more dense, interesting, complex print, simply just by continuing to layer, but thin layers. And also working from your lighter colors to your darker colors. That's another tip, and we'll talk about that more in another video. So I'd say the top 3 mistakes that I see frequently done on the plate is too much paint. So let's work with too much paint. So I'm gonna pull out my 𝐲𝐿 teal, and I'm using my 6x6 plate. And so sometimes I see this happening, you know, like it's just like all that's put down, and then it's rolling, and there's paint everywhere. There's paint on the brayer, and that sort of thing's happening. And then, well, first of all, when you put it down, you can feel the paper sliding. If you put your paper down and it slides, it's just too much. Then, when you take it up, you can see a lot of texture. I don't know if it's picking up in the video, but you have a lot of peaks and little mountains and valleys all over your print. That's just too much paint. You'll see here that with what you can also see on the brayer. See on the brayer how much paint was left on there because it was just so much between the plate and the brayer that it has the texture. You shouldn't have that texture in your brayer when you finish rolling color out on your plate. So I can take what we have here and just go back over things. You can even see that was running down the side of the plate. You see a lot of that. That's too much. So now let's pull this piece. That's a good amount on there. It's not too much. So just what was left on the plate and the brayer is plenty to pull a layer. Now I'm using semi-transparent because of the black bars. You can see a little bit of the black bars. So on the 𝐷𝐿 Paint Company, that's how you can tell. So this can go pretty thin that you'd be able to see layers underneath it. So here you can see that it's a smoother layer. We could get it, the plate started to dry a little bit, so it's not as complete, but I wanted to show you without adding any more paint that you get a much smoother layer. It dries right away, where this I'm sure is still wet in places. You know, you rub your finger across it and you're still pulling paint off. So you want the layers to dry quickly as well. That's the other thing, because it's important that you keep on adding to your print. And if the paper is too wet and it takes too long to dry, you can't put another layer down as easily as if, you know, you have these nice thin layers. So let's go and get a little quinacridone, which is more of a transparent. And now let's just do a thin layer. Let me show you. Well, first, let's stick with the one color so you can really see. So as opposed to what we put down the first time, I'd put down about a dime size, maybe just a little bit more. So we'll say about a nickel size worth of paint on this 6x6. That's going to be plenty. Just want to brayer it out, get a nice smooth layer. Lighten your touch as you get the paint distributed. In order to get it smooth, if you find that it's lifting up or creating streaks, just really layer you use your brayer just even more lightly, you know, lighten the touch on the paint, because it won't be too much paint that it will move around on you because you're not putting a lot down. Okay, and now we get a really good pull. And when this comes off the plate, see, I can literally rub it. I mean, I already had paint on my hands, so that's probably not fair. But you see, there's no paint coming off because that layer is nice and thin and it's ready to take the next thing. So let's say we wanted to put a little bit of quinacridone on it. And say I want to just mix a little bit like this over it. And then I'll just use the end of a paint tool and just create some lines. Nice thin layer. A little bit of the turquoise that was still on my brayer mixed nicely. And now let's just come back over this print with another layer. Because this print was dry and we just use a very thin layer of this quinacridone, we go to pull it. See how you start building your print up? So you have just a little bit of lines in it, you know, broke up the surface a little bit. Quinacridone, we just used a little bit just to create a little variation without, you know, just with using 2 layers. Now I could come back with, just going to keep on making very thin layers. So let's use the zinc white. This is a translucent, so it's not a very, so I'm just going to put a little bit down. You get a clean brayer. And I want to show you, for what I want to do, that's too much. You see how we have this buildup of paint there? Too much. So we can come back over some, with this print right here, I can just off brayer some of the white and then come back. Still a little bit too much. That's why you always keep your other prints around and you're just building up. So there. That's good, it's nice and thin. And now let's just, I create some circles. And let's put this down. So this is just a quick session to show you the value of thin layers and how those thin layers will just keep on building up on the plate. And so see, we just have this really etheric white now over that blue. And we can still see all the color. We can see the blue, we're seeing the white, we're seeing this quinacridone layer, and we just did these very thin layers. So I hope this helps and drives home the point to not put a lot of paint on your plate. Let me just show you this also very quickly. I'm going to put down some quinacridone. See, I just used a spot of it. You don't need a lot. I'm going to come back with this brayer. I'm going to mix in with this white. Now, whenever you have a certain amount of paint down and you think, wow, I still want to have less, you can come back with your brayer and you do something called off brayering. You kind of, you know, roll it off on your scrap piece and you pull paint off. And you can literally see that paint coming off. So if you decide you want a really thin layer, you just grab another piece of paper and pull this. You're going to see how uber thin it is. This is how I do my glazing. When you just want a little bit of color. And so if you start off sometimes with too much paint, don't worry. Just, this was really thin. But you can see very thin. And even some of that color is there. But the point that I wanted to show you is that you can actually pull color back off of the plate just simply by, you know, taking the brayer, cleaning it off, rubbing it off on a scrap piece of paper, and coming again and doing that until you get the amount that you'd like. So I hope that helps. with the idea around not too much paint on the plate. Any questions you have about this, please put them below. But you see, with 3 easy pulls, we created a print that just has a nice complexity to it, very easy, no mess, and it's already dry and ready to go ahead and do something else with the print, or stencil over it, or do our intuitive scripting over it, lots of things. So until next week, please continue to comment. If you like the video, please thumb it up and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And until next Wednesday, happy creating. Bye-bye.